Today on Upfront, my extended interview with Governor Walker. Next, the governor on fixing our roads. How does he think the transportation funding debate will end? Fears of a trade war with Canada. Is Donald Trump's tough talk helping or hurting? And the governor's plans for 2018. Is he the favorite if he runs for a third term?
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Upfront. The legislature's budget writing committee really gets down to business this week and will begin voting on the state's next two-year spending plan. So what's likely to be in and out of the new budget? How will taxpayer dollars be spent? Republican Governor Scott Walker is our guest for the entire program today. Governor, good to have you back on Upfront.
Good to be with you, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Let's talk about the budget and first of all, transportation, since there's been a lot of back and forth on that. Give me your sense of where this is all going to end. What's this look like at the end of the day?
Well, when we started the budget process all the way through, consistently I've said it's a priority. In fact, the budget we proposed would put, cumulatively would have put $24 billion in over the 8 years that I've served by the time this budget is done. That's about $3 billion more than Jim Doyle did. So we put more into transportation for local road aids to fix roads and bridges, more to fix our state highways than ever before. There are some in the legislature who'd like to spend a little bit more. I'm willing to work with them on that. I've said repeatedly, we've already 2 weeks ago identified about $100 million more that can go in. I just don't want to add a gas tax or a vehicle registration fee, and I think we can get there.
And so how do you get there if you don't add a gas tax or a vehicle registration fee?
Well, 2 weeks ago, Dave Ross, our new Secretary of Transportation, did a good job. About a third of that was from higher than expected revenues. We hope that will continue to grow.
You'll know more in May on
Yeah, absolutely. And about two-thirds of that are dollars that we saved from LEDs. Historically, those dollars kind of just disappeared out there in the past, regardless of administration. We've actively said, no, we need to take those savings, apply those to doing new projects in the future. And we think we can find $200 to $300 million that we can essentially hand to the legislature and say, if you want to add more projects, you want to accelerate some things, we're willing to work with you on that.
Is this a short-term fix? That's what critics will say. A short-term fix. Why don't we do what Iowa did or what Indiana did or what Michigan did? And they bit the bullet and said, we're going to have to raise the gas tax a little bit in most of those cases. Or quite a bit, as they did in Iowa, 10 cents a gallon. But said we've got to do it to do long-term planning, long-term repairs.
But the difference is other states, Iowa, for which I love the folks in Iowa, but they don't yet have the reform dividend we've had here. It's why we're able to put, for example, historic amounts in K through 12 education as well. We're able to continue to provide property and income tax relief. In fact, eliminated a whole state tax in the state budget as well, and still put more into transportation. The difference is, with that reform dividend, we're able to continue to grow. And there are two key things that we include in this budget that haven't got a lot of attention. One is prevailing wage. Now, they may take that out and vote on that separately, but either way, that lowers the cost of providing that transportation infrastructure work. And secondly, one of the things that really hasn't got coverage, and that is what's called the PECVA fund. That's the dollars that for the last couple of decades have been used to clean up abandoned or old gas station sites. That'll be paid off. All the bonding on that will be paid off. And the 2 cents per gallon that currently is already collected, gas tax money that's already collected, will permanently go into the transportation fund. So it'll be like a 2 cent a gallon increase without a 2 cent a gallon increase.
So I hear you saying, other than that, you would veto anything that contains gas tax increase, vehicle registration fee increase, any of that is going to be vetoed.
I've said that from day one, from the time I introduced the budget, consistently all the way through. People keep asking about variations. I think there are ways we can put more dollars in to pay for things like transit out of the general fund and take it off the transportation fund. There are other ways we can do that, but now's not the time to raise gas taxes.
Final question on this. One of the arguments seems to be is what condition the state's roads are in. You see some of these reports, you hear Speaker Voss, Chairman Nygren talk about the poor condition of the state roads. I've had Dewey Strobel, the senator from Ozaukee County, on this program. He says that's overstated. They're not as bad as people say. How would you describe the condition of the state roads right now?
Well, I think if you look at the ratings that we've consistently used in the past, not just of late in this debate, you look at the main core, the backbone of the state system, and over 90% are ranked fair or better. Now, there are some that need improvements, and that's why we put record amounts. We've never invested more than we're proposing this budget for local roads, for county trunk roads, for state highway rehab, all the things at the local level that for years we've heard local officials say we need more help, and we listened. We held listening sessions in every one of our 72 states. That was one of the clearest things we heard back from, and that's what we're doing.
I do want to ask about that number, though, because I've seen studies by the American Society of Civil Engineers say 71% are in mediocre or poor condition. So there are other numbers out there.
There are. There's a whole spectrum out there. The bottom line is many of those statistics, even in those other rankings, different than what we've had consistently used in the Department of Transportation in the past, they tie in very much to local roads, to the county trunk roads, the town roads in many of our rural areas. That's why in this budget we provide more assistance, particularly for town roads, than we've ever had before. And so they're going to be the ones getting the biggest benefit out of our proposal.
If you move some money from general revenue, tax revenue, over to pay for transportation, what happens to, for example, the increase you propose for K through 12 spending or the UW system? What happens?
Well, we don't take that in the things we've looked at. We found it through additional savings that we found through waste, fraud, and abuse, through readjusting some other priorities. But we are fully committed. You remember a month or so ago, there was a fair amount of concern. In fact, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards put out an alert. I joined with them. They were concerned that the legislature might go down to zero. Our budget, the budget I proposed to them, put the most amount ever, the highest amount in K through 12 spending than ever before. The good news is, through a lot of attention drawn to this issue, they've now committed to keep that as the base. And in fact, about a week ago, the leaders of the Joint Finance Committee said it's very likely they're just going to keep intact what we've done. So K through 12 education increases continue. The new money we put in the UW system, I think, is going to be sound. The new money we're putting in the technical colleges, I think, is sound. The big thing I want to make sure on top of all this is we've had revenue growth even while tax rates have gone down. We've cut taxes consistently since I've been governor on property and income taxes. And yet revenues have gone up. If we want to continue to be able to do that, we've got to continue to provide that tax relief. And one of the things I worry about is that there might be some out there who say, well, we can ease off a little bit on property tax relief. Or one of the things we've heard in the Capitol of late is people say, well, maybe we don't need to eliminate the state tax that I proposed on the property tax bill. I say, absolutely not. That is permanent tax relief that people can take to the bank. We need to eliminate the state tax and property tax.
Back to K through 12 education spending, $649 million. Here's the question you hear about that. A couple of years ago, very flat budget for K through 12. This is a very substantial increase. Superintendent Evers, among others, likes that. But the question is, is the state's fiscal situation so different today than it was then? Or is this, as your critics say, simply an election year budget? It looks good, it feels good to the public out there.
Well, it's a number of things. It's responding to the listening sessions that we had across the state, and not only to teachers we invited, students we invited, superintendents, school board members, but on top of that, what I heard repeatedly all across the state, as I still do even this past week, are people, employers telling me we have jobs. We just don't have enough people with the education and the skills to fit that. So workforce to me is the number one priority in this budget. We now have more people employed in the state than we've ever had before. And unemployment rate's down to 3.4%. That's the lowest it's been since April of the year 2000. We're one of the top 10 states in terms of people in the workforce that are actively working in this state. And so my ongoing concern is where do I find enough people to fill those positions? And it's why it's a whole spectrum from worker training, technical colleges, youth apprenticeships, but K through 12 is a fundamental part of that. And with a reform dividend that is so sizable, we're able to do that, still cut taxes, still invest in transportation, fit the priorities. And for years, people told me, you got to do these tough reforms, but ultimately the voters want something to pay off for that. And this is the payoff. Education, transportation, tax relief continues.
So the election year has nothing to do with the increase?
Well, it all fits together. I mean, this is we laid out a plan. That's why I call it a reform dividend. This is not a bonus. This is not unexpected. We laid out over time a series of reforms that we said were tough but necessary, but would lead to prosperity, would lead to better times. These are the better times. And if next year people look at that and say, yeah, that's good stuff, I want more of that, that would be a pretty good campaign slogan. We're
going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Governor Walker. We'll be talking a little bit about the latest on that trade dispute with Canada. That and much more when we come back.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company.